This is GreatMillstone MailBag with another edition, feeding the elect through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. All praises and glories due to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai for giving us this knowledge, this truth, this understanding, especially in these times. You know, back in Yahushai's day, roughly about 2,000 years, a little more than 2,000 years ago, Yahushai was looked at as a threat to the Roman Empire. The proof on that is when, at the time of Yahushai's birth, you had this character, Herod, which was trying to find Yahushai, find the baby. This is when Yahushai was a baby, and kill the baby. And this is proof that they looked at Yahushai, especially the elites of Yahushai's day, the wicked elite of the Roman Empire in Yahushai's day. They looked at him as a threat, you know. And it's the same thing with us that represent Yahushai on the planet Earth. It's the same thing with us now. The wicked elite of this society look at us as a threat to their coming so-called New World Order. And they have different solutions that they believe will come to pass. And in this edition of the mailbag, I will feature one of the solutions that they think will solve the problem of the individuals that are going to come up against their so-called New World Order. Now keep in mind, that's the enterprise that the wicked elite of Esau, in particular the Rothschild family, that is the enterprise they're trying to shoot for, which is the so-called New World Order. You know, the symbol that is on the back of your so-called $1 bill. And they look at anyone who believes in the Bible among the different groups that they look at as a threat to the so-called New World Order. Anyone who believes in the Bible, not just Hebrew Israelites, but any group, any so-called Christian group, any group that believes in the Bible, that believes in the second coming of the Lord, they look at the wicked elite of Esau, they look at them as a threat to their so-called New World Order. Now, this all lines up with prophecy, which I'll feature towards the latter part of this video. But I have some information to show you, brothers, that this thing of ours is very real, that we are looked at as a threat to this so-called New World Order government. And they have gone ahead in discussions, in legislation, in different articles. They have gone ahead and tried to, or will try to implement dramatic and drastic solutions for those they deem a threat to their so-called coming New World Order. Now it is written, be not ignorant of any matter small or great. So we're going to take a look at least one of those so-called solutions in this edition of the mailbag. Now I'll start with this here. Now you've always heard us speak about, beginning with Elder Tower on down, you've always heard us speak about Project Megiddo. What Project Megiddo is a intelligence report on the different groups they deem, when I say they, I'm talking about the wicked elite of Esau, they deem as a threat to their so-called coming New World Order. Now, it says here, this is from a website I found on dealing with Project Megiddo. It says the attached analysis entitled Project Megiddo is an FBI strategic assessment of the potential for domestic terrorism in the United States. So When you see the term domestic terrorism, that's another term that they label anyone who believes in the Bible, anyone who's part of a so-called race-hating group, a so-called militia group. They deem them as domestic terrorists. Now we're just going to focus on what concerns us, which is we that believe in the scriptures, we that believe in the Holy Scriptures as Hebrew Israelites. We're looked at as domestic terrorists. So when you see the term domestic terrorism, you can throw in the Hebrew Israelites underneath that title. So let's read it again. Project Megiddo is an FBI strategic assessment of the potential for domestic terrorism in the United States, undertaken in anticipation of or response to the arrival of the new millennium, which we're in the new millennium now. And here you see the symbol of the FBI symbol, which you'll notice you see the red shield, which goes back to the Rothschilds. So the Rothschilds are really spearheading this. Now, again, Project Megiddo, the table of contents. Now let's look at some of the groups they deem as a threat. Christian identity, which when we say that we're Hebrew Israelites, we are pronouncing our Christian identity. Because remember, the Christians, the real Christians, are the Hebrew Israelites. That's pursuant to Acts the 11th chapter, the 26th verse. We were called Christians first in Antioch, as it is written. So the real Christians are Hebrew Israelites. Okay, so you see Christian identity, one of those groups they deem as a threat. White supremacy, white supremacist groups. Militias. Black Hebrew Israelites. Notice the term black, because they don't believe that we're Hebrew Israelites, so they put the word black, which when you look up the word black, it means negative. Okay, so Hebrew Israelites, they deem us as being a threat. Okay, so and you see it here under the contents. So this alone should show you that we are in the scope of these devils, in particular the FBI, which put together this report they entitled Project Megiddo. Now, I want to read to you analysis, short analysis of this intelligence report entitled Project Megiddo. It says, while several professional terrorist groups still exist and present a continued threat to domestic security. When you see domestic security, is really referring to the so-called New World Order, the status quo, as it were, of Esau, which Esau is trying to bring this so-called New World Order. And there are many scriptures to support the fact that Esau is trying to bring a so-called New World Order. You know, one that comes to mind right now is the book of Job, when it is written, while he is eating. You know, speaking about Esau and his bid to set up his so-called world government. So there's plenty of scriptures that support the fact that Esau is trying to bring the so-called New World Order. Reading on, it says, the overwhelming majority of extremist groups in the United States have adopted a fragmented, leaderless structure where individuals or small groups act with autonomy. And you better believe the Hebrew Israelites come under that, or what they call black Hebrew Israelites. Clearly, the worst act of domestic terrorism in United States history was perpetrated by merely two individuals, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. And I believe that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols were both set up. You know, this is a case of autowab chaos. You know, we set up the chaos to justify bringing in the order. So I believe both those individuals was set up by the same government they claimed they were against to do what they did to justify bringing in that more control and more order. In many cases, extremists of this sort are extremely difficult to identify until after an incident has occurred. That's why some of these groups out there, these Hebrew Israelite groups, have sold out. Because there's they have moles within these different groups. Do they have moles in GMS, GreatMillstone? Well, they may have moles. They may have spies. The scriptures speak about spies. I believe that's in the book of Galatians. Spies that would be among us. But anyway, there's nothing that to you spies out there. There's nothing that you can do. You cannot stop this program. As it is written, the gates of hell shall not prevail against this program that Yahweh Shem Yahushua have set up. All right, so reading on, it says, thus analysis of domestic extremism, in which the group serves as the focal point of evaluation, has obvious limitations. The Project Megiddo Intelligence Initiative has identified very few indications of specific threats to domestic security. This is why I'm reading this analysis here, to show you that they have gone ahead and done an in-depth analysis they call Project Megiddo, and they're focusing on these different groups. And we as Hebrew Israelites, which they call black Hebrew Israelites, are right in their crosshairs, are right in the scope. And it's imperative that you brothers know this, or that you are aware of this. As it is written, we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. So this is one of Satan's devices. The Project Megiddo Intelligence Initiative has identified very few indications of specific threats to domestic security. Given the present nature of domestic extremism, this is to be expected. However, this is a function of the limitations of the group-oriented model of counter-terrorism analysis and should not be taken necessarily as reflective of a minor or trivial domestic threat. Without question, this initiative has revealed indicators of potential violent activity on the part of extremists in this country. And they could easily create some kind of chaos and blame it on a Hebrew Israelite group. And we saw that with Peter, Lucas, Moses, just one example, and thereby justifying them coming after us with their military or whatever. And it was the same thing with Yahweh Shai. Scriptures speak about the hour of temptation that came for Yahweh Shai, the hour of his trouble, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Judas and the rest of the soldiers came up upon him and arrested him, had him arrested. So it's the same thing with us, and I'll focus on that scripture a little later in the lesson. Reading on, it says, without question, this initiative has revealed indicators of potential violent activity on the part of extremists in this country, militias adherent of racist beliefs, systems such as Christian identity, again, Hebrew Israelites, and Odinism, and other radical domestic extremists are clearly focusing on the millennium as a time of action. Certain individuals from these various perspectives are acquiring weapons, storing food and clothing, raising funds through fraudulent means, procuring safe houses, preparing compounds, surveying potential targets, and recruiting new converts. So again, this shows you that these devils are looking at the different groups that are spreading across the country that are rising up against their so-called New World Order. And one of these groups that they are seriously looking at is the Hebrew Israelites, which they call black Hebrew Israelites. And I just read to you analysis or proof that they're doing this under something called Project Megiddo. Okay, so we are in their crosshairs. All right, so they have a solution, or some solutions. One of them is the concentration camp. The other is the firing squad, which they're going to try to bring back. But in this lesson, I'm going to focus on a radical solution, or what they think is a solution that they have for those they deem a threat to their so-called New World Order, and that's the guillotine. That is the guillotine, brothers. And this guillotine lines up with Bible prophecy. Okay? Lines up with Bible prophecy. This is before it's news. This is an article entitled Just Released. Now note the date of this article. It's July 23rd, 2014. So it's in the next couple of months this article will be about a year old. So it's pretty recent. It says, just released, executions by guillotine finally passed in the United States, and government is pushing for nationwide use. So they could use the guillotine as a method of execution for those that they deem a threat to the coming so-called New World Order. And one of the main threats is the ones that believe in the scriptures, the ones that believe in the Bible. Just like Yahushua was a threat back more than 2,000 years ago to the so-called Roman Empire. So much so they executed Yahushua on the cross, which was in line with prophecy anyway. You know, it was prophesied that Yahushua would die on the cross for the sins of the nation of Israel, in particular the elect. But fast forward to today's age, the guillotine is one of the methods that they want to bring back, which is an ancient form of execution, an ancient form of punishment. This is something they want to bring back and use it for this coming so-called New World Order. And this is the reason why I'm reading this article, to show you that this is very this will be a very real scenario. Executions by guillotine, which, by the way, I don't have the article in front of me, but I had read an article because I've been following this for about 2 or 3 years now. Occasionally I've spoken on this, the guillotine. There was a railroad car full of guillotines that were shipped from, I believe, either Korea or China, that were shipped to the United States. So you have to ask yourself, why are they shipping all these guillotines to the United States? What's the purpose of it? Well, this should give you some insight. Just released, executions by guillotine finally passed in the United States, and government is pushing for nationwide use. So this explains why there were so many guillotines that were shipped here. Okay. And as a matter of fact, if, let's say, the option of the chip was put before you and you didn't want to take the chip, you refused the chip, you could be put in the guillotine. Okay. And I'm going to show you in the scriptures that certain of you brothers, hell, even myself, it depends on what is the will of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Certain of us brothers will be put in this guillotine as a test of our faith. But I'm moving a little ahead of myself, so let me just read this information. It's exciting, and I want to bring it out. So you see the picture of the guillotine here. Okay, this is what it looks like. If you're not familiar with what the guillotine is, what its purpose is, and how it works, just Google guillotine and it'll bring you up to speed. Now, the first when I used to talk about this 2 or 3 years ago, it was based upon the legislation that was passed in Georgia to bring back the guillotine. So now they want to make it, as you see here, according to this article, now they want to make it nationwide. All right, so it first started in Georgia. They passed laws in Georgia to allow for the use of the guillotine on death row, But were you also aware a federal judge has now joined the ranks of those pushing for the use of guillotines nationwide? Now do you see why they botch executions? And recently I'd heard of a story that where this execution, I believe the individual was being electrocuted, and it was a botched execution. So they're saying that the guillotines are more humane, a humane way of immediately killing somebody, executing for somebody that's on death row, immediately killing them. The guillotines are, it's most appropriate. So reading on, it says, now do you see why they botch executions? They need to make the people demand a better way to kill. And part of the New World Order, part of the program of the New World Order is killing. There's going to be a lot of killing, a lot of death, a lot of destruction. Like I said, they plan to bring back the firing squad. There's other methods of killing that they have lined up for individuals that will not accept or bow to the will of the so-called New World Order. So you better believe killing is a part of the program. And that's scriptural as well. That lines up with the book of Jeremiah 30:7, where it speaks about the time of Jacob's trouble. Because the main threat, because we're talking about threats to the so-called New World Order, the main threat is you tribes, you Israelites out there. Just like 2,000 years ago, Yahushua was the main threat to the Roman Empire. Okay? So now let's read on. It says, just as predicted in the end times, death by beheading. And they're using this statement is based upon the scripture in the book of Revelation, the 20th chapter, around the 4th verse. All right, so just as predicted in the end times, death by beheading. And this seems to be the way in which they are bringing this primitive form of punishment back to the present. Of course, we can't dismiss that this form of punishment has been taken place by sword in other parts of the world. As of late, you've noticed, you've seen a lot of videos, even though they may be fake, of beheading, people getting their heads cut off. So they're getting you used to what's coming. Okay? And as men of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, it's our duty to examine this. As it is written, we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. Again, as it is written, be not ignorant of any matter small or great. You see, while you got all these other Israelite groups that are in La La Land, we here at Great Millstone, we deal with reality, man.